Hello, folks. Happy Wednesday. Listen carefully. Respublica Islamica Irania delenda est. Steve, what did you just say? I just said in Latin, the Islamic Republic of Iran must be destroyed. Now, I posted that on my Facebook page this morning while I was drinking a cup of homemade macchiato or espresso with some milk in it, hoping that it would trigger the memory of those of you that may have taken Roman studies in school or in college of a similar quote that's attributed to Cato the Elder, who lived in the 2nd century BC. He served as the censor of the Roman Republic Senate. And in the year 152 BC, this veteran of the second of 3 Punic Wars, wars against ancient Carthage, the reason it's referred to as the Punic Wars is because that word, at least in English, what we call Punics is the Latin way of referring to the ancient Phoenicians. For Carthage was colonized originally by Phoenicians from the cities of Tyre and Sidon. You know these cities for those of you that are biblically literate, okay? The ancient Phoenicians. Well, this veteran of the Second Punic War, Cato the Elder, went as an emissary to Carthage, and he was absolutely astounded of the wealth and power of the city. And from thenceforth, whenever he would give a speech in the Senate or in any other venue in the Roman Republic, regardless of what that topic was, it could even be about the sewage pipes in the city of Rome itself. It doesn't matter. At the end of the speech, he would always say, Carthago delenda est. I tell you, Carthage must be destroyed. And he repeated this over and over and over again because on that trip in 152 BC to Carthage, he realized that there was no room in the Mediterranean world for coexistence between Rome and Carthage. Now, that sounds like a brutal assessment, and the Romans would go on to utterly raze Carthage. Now, I'm by no means suggesting, God forbid, that Israel or the United States destroy and raze Iran to the ground, or Tehran, its capital city, to the ground. Iran is exceptional in the context of Middle Eastern countries. Did you know, because most Americans don't, did you know that Iran, they're not Arabs? In fact, the very name of Iran means in Farsi, land of the Aryans. They're Aryans. Now, I know that that term conjures up all sorts of things in our head because Adolf Hitler referred to his people, the Germans, and other Europeans as Aryans. But it's actually the Iranians and people in India that are considered the founding stock of that Indo-European race, and it's reflected in Iran's very title for their country. Their language, Farsi, is more related to German than it is to Arabic, the language of its neighbors, or Turkish. It has nothing related to those languages. So the Iranians aren't even Arabs. They're Shiite Muslims, and they are a very ancient people. They've been around, some people would say between maybe 5,000 to 6,000 years, going all the way back to the origins of Iran, almost as ancient as the Egyptians. So they have a long, proud history, and they converted to Islam and to a particular form of it called Shiism, which I may address in another video. What's the difference between the Sunnis, the Shiites, and all that stuff? Unfortunately, in 1979, the country was taken over by a revolution that ousted the country's king, the Shah. Okay, some of you are old enough to remember this, and replaced it with the Islamic Republic headed by the Ayatollah Khomeini. And that regime has been in place ever since. And it has as its goal world revolution, exporting its brand of Islam and its brand of Sharia law to the whole world. And it intends to do this by the sword. And it refers to the United States as the great Satan, the head of all the evil in the world, and Israel, the little Satan. And ever since 1979, that Islamic regime repeats over and over and over again that it ultimately has as its goal the destruction of the great Satan, the United States, and of course the little Satan, Israel. And when those two cookies crumble, the rest of the Western world will be easy pickings for their revolution. Now, you may say to me, Steve, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. How did these Iranians think that they could overthrow and destroy utterly the United States of America, the greatest country in world history, the most powerful military in world history, the wealthiest country in world history? Iran, what are they compared to the United States? But you know what? They believe with all their hearts that this is going to happen. And America, since 1979, refuses to listen and tries to appease them and tries to somehow meet them halfway and look for moderates within that regime that they could somehow get around the revolution, bypass those goals of destroying the great Satan and the little Satan, and turning Iran into a country that's ruled by pragmatism instead of its founding revolutionary theology and ideology. And guess what, folks? It's not going to happen. They're married to this cause, and they're succeeding in this cause. Now, obviously, they can't destroy the great Satan yet. They don't have the nuclear weapons yet. They are striving to get those nuclear weapons. Most estimates are that they're only a few weeks from getting them from the moment they decide to make that final sprint, which they haven't done yet, towards getting those missiles. And on the day they got those missiles, the plan was then to release Hezbollah and Hamas at the same time to destroy the little Satan. And then guess who's next in their sights? The great Satan. Now, why am I bringing this all up? Because I'm absolutely vexed with what I've seen in the Israeli war leadership in the last 19 days. Believe it or not, that's how long it's been since the October 7th calamity, which, the atrocity, okay, the massacre. This is day 19 of the war, and Israel has yet to really define, to wage it. Yes, they're bombing Hamas and Gaza every single night, and a couple of nights ago was the largest bombing campaign since the war began, and it's having some effect. But we wonder what's the next stage. And everybody says in unison, like a chorus, that the next stage is a ground campaign in Gaza, which many generals here in America in particular have said will be the bloodiest urban warfare since World War II. The bloodiest warfare since World War II. This is serious stuff. And yet the head of the snake of all of this that makes it possible, that allows Hamas, that feeds Hamas, okay, that gives it the air it breathes, basically, metaphorically, the money for its weapons, the training, all of that comes from Iran. And I say, where's the Israel of old, the Israel of 1967, the Six-Day War, that showed creativity, took initiative, showed itself to have imagination, for lack of better words? I'm speaking off the cuff here. I don't follow a script. Where's the Israel of old? Why does it look like ever since 1967, Israel has been dull in the mind when it wages war? It becomes predictable in what it does. And it's announced to the whole world that it's going to enter the Gaza Strip on a ground campaign. And I ask, why are they not attacking the octopus at its head? Take out the Iranian regime and the tentacles die. I say take out the Iranian regime, then, or simultaneously take out Hezbollah, and then Hamas would be easy pickings as the body that supported the tentacle dies. And yet, no word of this in Israeli circles. The Minister of Economics, who used to be the mayor of Jerusalem, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he said that If Iran does a single thing more, in helping Hezbollah, let's say, to launch an attack at Israel, then Israel will take the war directly to Iran and attack and cause great destruction. And I wonder, is this just empty words? Now, in the last 2 weeks, the United States, its positions in the Middle East have been attacked 13 times, and over a couple dozen American service people have been injured. None of them, thank God, have been injured with life-threatening injuries or, critical injuries, but they've been attacked. And at some point, America has to do something about that. Now, none of us want to see, including myself, American boots on the ground. I'm not advocating for another the second Iraq War. I'm not advocating for an attack on Iran following the pattern of the war against Iraq under George Bush the son, or even Afghanistan or any of that stuff. I don't think Israel or America has to do any of that stuff to commit boots to the ground. The Iranian regime can be seriously injured without a single boot on the ground. That's a fact. And yet, the fact, everybody's so, what's the word I want to use? Afraid of them. And they smell our fear. They sense it over and over. Joe Biden and his Secretary of State, who I said it for the most part, have handled this war pretty well since it started. Not part of the echo chambers and the political tribalism here in the United States where I feel I have to vilify, one side and totally champion the other side. I try to keep an open mind in all this and stay above the political tribalisms here in the United States. For the most part, Joe Biden's administration has handled this war well. But every day they publicly say over and over again, we do not want a war with Iran. So Iran, how do you think they're going to interpret that? Is weakness. So go attack more American troops. Go bring more harm to America's interests, because they just said over and over and over again they don't want a war with us. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of fighting another Middle Eastern war, and they know the populace in the United States would definitely be against it. And I get it, but I'm telling you, it wouldn't require that type of boots in the ground. Now, we don't know how this is going to progress. I told you guys in the last few days that there's already one aircraft carrier battle group in the Eastern Mediterranean, the Gerald Ford, which is the largest aircraft carrier in the American Navy. Currently, the Eisenhower has just crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, which means it's 4 days away from the Middle East, from the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, all that area. So now they're coming, and guess what? A third carrier group, the Abraham Lincoln, is now being moved as a third battle group, third aircraft carrier into the Middle East theater. Wow. Folks, this is a huge portion of the American Navy, and the American Navy is the vanguard of America's power in the world, and much of it is now being diverted to the Middle East. And thank God it is, and it's one of the reasons why Israel's been asked to not begin any campaign in Gaza or anywhere else, in order to give the United States time to get all of its assets there in case it has to intervene on behalf of its own interests if its soldiers continue to be attacked at American outposts in Iraq and Syria. So, but my disappointment is with Israel. Israel should be taking the war to the enemy, to Hezbollah, to Iran. You know what? Leave Hamas behind for a few weeks, even a couple months, if you have to, and use those couple months to continue to try to get the hostages out and to continue to starve and to thirst the enemy. As cruel as that sounds, folks, war is war. And I'm not nearly as concerned as a lot of people are about the suffering in Gaza. It is what it is. 80% of their population sided with Hamas before October 7th's massacre. 80% of them, when polled, and the Gazans have been polled regularly since 2006 when they put Hamas into power democratically, it's been a consistent 80% support for them, and a support for their ideology and for their jihadism. And therefore, I'm not I don't agree with President Biden and those that say that Hamas doesn't represent the majority of the Palestinians, or what's called the Arab Street in Gaza. Hamas does. Hamas is Gaza. Gaza is Hamas. It doesn't mean that I enjoy seeing their babies, their innocent kids, having buildings crumble upon them in Israeli air raids, but their jihadi parents are responsible for bringing that upon their own heads, not Israel. Israel needs to win the war at all costs. Again, at all costs. Otherwise, they have no business being in the Middle East. If you can't survive in the jungle, then leave the jungle. Go elsewhere. It means you're not fit to live in that environment. If you want to survive in such an environment, you better play by the rules of that environment, or the environment, the jungle, will eat you up and spit you out of its mouth. There's chaos in other parts of the Middle East, okay? There's 5,000 Shiite militiamen on the border of Iraq and Jordan, and they're trying to put pressure on Jordan to let them through, to come to the Jordanian border with Israel, which is the longest border that Israel has with any of its neighbors, a couple 100 miles long, okay? Likewise, there's Shiite militias on the border of Syria, and Syria has recently fired some rockets into the Golan Heights. We know about Hezbollah. What we don't know, and this is amazing, I heard this for the first time today, is that even Egypt has become, the leader of Egypt, al-Sisi, has come under tremendous pressure from popular opinion in his country to get involved, to do something. His army is one of the most powerful in the Middle East. It's been equipped ever since the Camp David peace agreement with Israel, done under the auspices of Jimmy Carter. His army's been equipped by not only American tanks, the very factory that makes the American tanks, the Abrams tank, is located in Egypt. So even the assembly line of these American tanks is there in Egypt itself. They have this American aircraft and division and division and division of tanks. Now, do I think Egypt would be so stupid to violate its peace agreement with Israel in 1979 and open hostilities with them? No, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. Many years ago, there was an Israeli gentleman in the cabinet, a Jewish immigrant from Moldavia, of all places, named Avigdor Lieberman, and he served in security-related cabinet posts. And one day, he was asked by the Israeli media what would happen if Egypt were ever to start a war with Israel, and rescind its peace treaty with Israel. And he basically said, we'd hit the Aswan Dam, the dam that holds back the Nile River, that Israel would basically destroy the dam, and the whole of the Egyptian Nile River Valley, where their whole population lives, would be drowned, and a lot of people would die. The country would be destroyed. So it wouldn't be wise of the Egyptians to ever break that peace treaty, because ever since they built that Aswan Dam, they are now very vulnerable should that dam ever collapse, either by accident or not by accident. And none of us in Israel, I'm not presently in Israel, I'm here in the States, but I'm still part of the place. I still live there when I do have a job, 6 to 7 months a year. None of us in Israel want to see a end of the peace treaty with Egypt. It's worked. It's actually worked really well. There's no real peace between Israelis and Egyptians, or Israeli and Jordanians. Israel has a peace treaty with Jordan since 1994. The Arab Street of both those countries hate the Jews and hate Israel. And I know, because I've been to Jordan a few times, and I've observed on the so-called Arab Street while I was there to see where these people are with the Jews in Israel. Egypt, I've never been to the mainland, only to the Sinai Peninsula, which Israel gave back as part of the Camp David peace treaty. But the Egyptians are known, the Arab Street of Egypt, they hate Israel. The Arabs in general throughout the Arab world hate Israel with an nihilistic, genocidal hatred. The peace that Israel has with Jordan and Egypt is simply between the governments of those countries, not the peoples, because it's in those countries' interest. Why did Jordan make a peace treaty with Israel? Because 80% of its population is Palestinian. The king himself is a foreigner. He comes from Mecca, from a family that used to be what's called the Sharif. Sharif in Arabic is where we get the word sheriff, believe it or not, in English. And in the Arabic context, it was referring to the governor of Mecca. So the family were the governing family of Mecca until World War I. And at the conclusion of World War I, the British awarded the family two countries that they created out of thin air. The Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan, that's what it was called, because it also had the West Bank of the Jordan River in addition to the East Bank. You've heard that term, the West Bank, thrown around because Israel today possesses it, and that's what the world media calls it, the West Bank. Who coined that term? The Jordanians. It was referring to the West Bank of their Transjordan kingdom, the kingdom on both sides of the Jordan, until Israel captured that territory in 1967. Okay, the second country that was created out of thin air following World War I, believe it or not, Iraq, a country that has no history prior to its creation by the British. Jordan was given to one son of King Abdullah, okay, the Sharif of Mecca, and he became the leader of Transjordan. A second son became the king over Iraq until that son was ultimately overthrown and would be replaced by the Ba'athist Party of Saddam Hussein, who we all know of in our lifetimes. Why did Jordan make peace with Israel? Because 80% of its population descends from Palestinians, and the king himself is from Mecca. And they don't see him as one of them. Okay, they see him as a foreigner. They see him as originally from Saudi Arabia. It doesn't represent them. In 1970, okay, the Palestinians tried to overthrow the family. And it was in September of 1970, they tried to overthrow the family. To this day, it's known as Black September. The king, Hussein at the time, that was the king of Jordan, had to save their dynasty. And in doing so, he killed between 10 and 30,000 Palestinians and kicked them out, a lot of them. He kicked out of the country. He kicked out Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of that attempt to overthrow the king of Jordan. Arafat would end up in southern Lebanon, from where he would continue to fight Israel until Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982 to address that threat on its northern border. I'm giving you a lot of history off the cuff here that I wasn't planning to give you. But is the Arab street of Jordan friendly to Israel? No. And in fact, the king's wife is Palestinian. And last night when she was being interviewed by Christiane Amanpour, she launched into her bully pulpit, what do you call it, the bully pulpit, and basically denied the whole atrocities that, especially the beheadings of the babies. You've heard it said by Israel that 40 babies were killed at a certain kibbutz, and many of them beheaded. And unfortunately, unlike a lot of the other atrocities that Hamas committed, the beheading of the babies wasn't captured on film. So therefore, a lot of people think Israel made it up. I don't think Israel made it up. I believe it. And I wish the Israeli coroners that handled those bodies would have photographed them. For some reason, the burning of the babies, which was captured on film and is available on the internet, the riddling of the babies with bullets, the tearing out the fetus from a pregnant woman while killing her, much of which, again, has been posted on the internet. You can find these things readily, okay? That doesn't matter. What matters to people like the Queen of Jordan is that they didn't show the babies who were beheaded, and therefore, Israel's in the wrong because they can't prove that the babies were beheaded, just burned and shot and torn out of their mother's wombs. So there's no love between the peoples, guys. And she and her husband's regime are only at peace with Israel because he relies on a partnership with the Israeli intelligence and security establishment to keep him in power. And nothing speaks louder to that point than the fact that the king of Jordan has a palace right on the nautical border of Israel in the city of Eilat. In other words, if you were to go with me to Eilat, and some of you have, and sometimes we'll take a cruise on the Red Sea on the nautical borders between Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And while the boat's facing Jordan, I say to you, look at that home. It's right on the border with Israel. It's the king's palace. And just on the other side of the palace is an Israeli naval base. And the whole reason why the king's palace is right there on the border next to an Israeli Navy base is in case he has to flee for his life to that Israeli Navy base, should his Palestinian majority of population rise up against him, like they did in that fateful month of September back in the early 1970s. So that's called realpolitik. That's why these countries have peace with Israel. Now, the last thing I want to say before I bring this update to a close is that there was a poll taken in Turkey. The leader Erdogan, who is himself an offshoot, his political party is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, which Hamas is part of the same stock, okay, the same tree stump, if you will. They're branches of the same movement. The Islamic Brotherhood was founded in Egypt, and it has its own proteges, okay, the one in Turkey led by Erdogan, Hamas being in the Gaza Strip. And today Erdogan made a speech before his parliament in which he said Hamas is not a terror group but a liberation organization. You know, basically there's nothing wrong with them. But only 11% of the Turks, when polled, want their government to actively support the Hamas regime in Gaza. In other words, 89% of the Turkish people want nothing to do with this war. They do not want their leader to drag them into a war on behalf of Hamas. And this is important because there's people in the Israel Update world that will tell you that at any moment Turkey is going to invade Israel together with Iran, together with Russia, as part of the Gog and Magog scenario of Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. But I'm telling you that so far, 89% of the Turks want nothing to do with this war. Doesn't mean that one day Ezekiel 38 and 39 won't be fulfilled. But at the same time, be weary of people that sensationalize and every week try to whip up everybody's expectation that any second Gog and Magog is about to happen. It could happen. I'm not saying there's zero chance that it could happen, but it still may be many years away. Who's to say that Israel and Iran don't fight several wars before Gog and Magog? Who's to say that the Gog and Magog war is the only war between Israel and Iran? I promise you guys in all my updates, and even when I do get into the Bible, I'm never going to sensationalize. There's people whose entire business model, for them to stay relevant, they're under pressure to just cause you every day to think any second the apocalypse is upon us. Apocalypse is coming, but I don't know when, and guess what? They don't know either. But anyway, I want to thank you for spending time with me in this, which is probably my lengthiest update to date. And look, I'm an off-the-cuff speaker. I don't even know what I'm going to speak about typically when I do these updates. I just go with the flow. Leave questions. Give a thumbs up if you want. I'm going to append, if I can, articles for further reading, as well as for the first time I'm appending a link to my Patreon account. What is Patreon? Patreon is a site that helps YouTube creators like myself, what they call content creators, to try to make some money on the side while doing these things like making YouTube videos. Now, in my case, I told you I'm unemployed because of this war. So I don't feel it's wrong for me to put this link there. This is what I'm doing in lieu of my job. So if you're interested in embracing or adopting this channel, you can visit my Patreon link, and for only $3 a month, you can adopt and become a partner with this channel. The content's for free. I'm going to continue to make all these videos, crank them out as much as I can for free. But at the same time, if you want to embrace the channel, adopt it, I provide a link for it to my Patreon page, and for only $3 a month, you can help me as I go through this period of calamitous unemployment, following the 2 years of unemployment during the Corona years. Anyway, guys, Thank you for spending your time with me again. I realize your time is precious, as is mine. And I want to thank you and wish you a continual pleasant day or evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Thanks for joining Steve, the tour guide. Bye-bye.